Hi there. In this video, we will talk about Java Virtual Machine. Let's first start with a brief history of Java. Java was released in 1995, and it was a time when all the other programming languages were written specific to the operating systems, and even the program memory was managed by the software developers. If you go ahead and write a program of C and compile it on your machine, let's say you are running the code on Windows machine, so you compile the code on Windows machine and you want to run the same piece of code, compiled code on Linux machine or a Mac machine, this program will not work. So in order to make it work, you will have to go ahead and compile the code on that particular machine on which you want to run the code. And managing the program memory was another overhead at that time. The software developer who is writing a program is supposed to deallocate the memories, whichever is being occupied during the program run. So Java came up with two concepts. First is write once and run anywhere. This means that once a developer or a programmer has written a piece of code and it is compiled, it should run on any machine, irrespective of the platform or the operating system or the hardware. It should be able to run. And the other concept was automatic memory management. Java came up with the concept of automatic memory management, also called as a garbage collector, which provides or facilitates a mechanism in which all the objects which are not being referenced in the memory are automatically collected and removed from the memory to free up some space for the programs to run smoothly. Let's do a typical C versus Java comparison in terms of code versus code compilation and execution to understand how the things were different when it comes to compiling and executing a program. Taking a typical example of C, let's say we have two files a1.c and a2.c. A1 contains a main function and which further calls a f1 function, and f1 function is defined in a2.c file. When we compile both these files, its corresponding obj files are generated. The obj file actually contains the machine native code which is understandable by the machine on which it is compiled. Okay, so this is the problematic point. Once these obj files are generated, they are linked together, or you can say clubbed together using a linker, and an executable file is generated. So this is the compiling and linking process. Once this executable file is generated, this file is loaded into the RAM and is executed on that particular machine. So let's say you want to run the same compiled code on a different machine. It won't work because the obj file contains the native instruction of the machine on which it is compiled. So you want to compile the code, you want to run the code on, let's say, Linux or Mac or Windows, you will have to compile the code, link the code, and load the code again and again. Let's see how Java write once and run anywhere works. A typical Java code is written with an extension of .java. Once it is compiled using a compiler, Java C, it generates a bytecode, a .class file. This bytecode is something that is uh, fed as an input to JVM. Okay, so the bytecode is only understandable by JVM. It is not something, it is not a native machine code. It is something that is only understandable by JVM. JVM interprets the bytecode, the binary code that is generated after the compiler, and executes it into the native machine code. Okay, so the compilation is okay, but the interpretation and linking process is done by JVM at the runtime. Okay, so this is something that helps Java obtain this write once and run anywhere concept, and or we can say software interoperability. So the compiled code can be run on any machine because of JVM. Let's again compare C and Java in terms of memory management. So a typical C program in which a programmer is supposed to allocate some memory, let's say for a continuous allocation of an array or something, uh, they use a method called malloc, which allocates a continuous memory and returns a pointer to that memory. Once the program is done and that memory allocation is used, then the programmer is supposed to free that memory. So this is how memory was managed manually by the software developer whenever they were writing the program. Let's now understand memory management in Java. A Java programmer is not responsible to manage the memory programmatically. In software development terms, Java is not close to the metal as C and C++. It means that Java does not provide us with such low-level native functions to work with the operating systems that will help the programmer to manage the memory programmatically. But C and C++ are low-level languages and they provide us with such functions, such native functions that can help the programmer to write code in order to manage the memory programmatically. Java memory management is something that is also called as garbage collection. And garbage collection works with a mark and sweep mechanism. There is a daemon thread that runs on the entire memory, entire heap memory, and it checks for the objects which are not currently being referenced or some lonely objects which are not being referenced, and it marks them. And garbage collection then runs another daemon thread and checks what are the objects that are marked as non-referenced and sweeps out those non-referenced objects from memory and free up some space for the application to run smoothly. Let's now understand what exactly is JVM then. Java Virtual Machine, it stands for Java Virtual Machine. It's a virtual machine that provides a runtime environment. Uh, Typically, a virtual machine is something that sits on top of the actual machine and it provides us some environment on which you can work with the native machine, right? So, JVM is also a virtual machine that provides us with a runtime environment to run Java programs or programs written in other languages that are compiled to Java bytecode. So, in the modern day programming languages, JVM is not only being used by Java, but it is also being used by other modern programming languages like Groovy, Scala, that are using JVM to run programs on different machines using the same concept of write once and run anywhere. So JVM is the one that is responsible for Java's cross-platform portability. And because JVM is aware of the platform specific and native instruction that helps the JVM to interpret the bytecode that is fed as an input to JVM and convert those bytecodes, read those bytecodes and convert them into the native instructions on the machine on which it is being run. There are actually three aspects to JVM. JVM is something that is also a specification, JVM is something that is also a implementation, and JVM is also something that is an instance. So let's understand all these three aspects when we talk about JVM. JVM specification. JVM is an abstract virtual computer defined by a specification. So when we say JVM is occupying a lot of memory or something, that is not JVM specification. So JVM is something that is an abstract virtual machine, and so you need a concrete implementation of JVM in order to run any Java application. So any Java application can only run inside a concrete implementation for JVM. So JVM is by default provided with an abstract implementation. This is a quote that is copied from the official Java JVM specification release. To implement a Java virtual machine correctly, you just need to be able to read the class file format and correctly perform the operations specified therein. So this is written in a very simple words, but it is not that much simple. But it simply says that the concrete implementation of JVM should only know how to read a class file format and correctly perform the operations that are written in that particular class file. Okay, let's now understand what exactly is JVM implementation then. The concrete implementation of JVM is provided by various companies, both open source and proprietary. Here are some examples, and there are few common examples which we are always using whenever we are installing JDK or release from Oracle. The default implementation that you come across is Hotspot. Okay, and this is something that is managed by Oracle right now, and that is the actual JVM implementation that is running the Java programs. JVM instance. So every time you try to run an application, let's say for example by running a Java command on the command prompt and loading a file, that creates a JVM instance. And that JVM instance runs the entire program. And once the program ends, the JVM instance is lost. Now that we understand all the aspects of JVM, let's see how JVM works. JVM typically contains three subsystems: class loader subsystem, runtime data area, and execution engine. All these three submodules of JVM interact with each other and runs the code that is provided as an input to JVM. JVM typically performs three operations: loading the code, verifying the code, and executing the code. Loading the code is something that is done by the class loader. Verifying is also done by the class loader. It interacts with the runtime data area to save the metadata or the class level information into the memory, and the execution is the submodule which actually executes the instructions that are written in the bytecode. So it reads the bytecodes one by one, and it executes, it interprets those bytecode and executes the instruction one by one. Sometimes execution engine also requires to use native method calls to interact with the operating system and the hardware required to run the application. So as JVM is sitting on top of the actual operating system, it understands what is the native methods or the native instructions that are required in order to interact with the operating systems, to work with the resources and all those things. Let's see how the JVM architecture looks like. This is a typical JVM architecture. And in this JVM architecture, we are seeing each and every subcomponents of the components which we discussed right now. Let's talk about class loader subsystem at a high level. It contains the three-step process. It is loading, linking, and initialization. Once the class is loaded into the JVM, uh, it is the metadata or the information of the class level is stored into the method area of JVM. So JVM also contains the runtime data areas, and these data areas are something that can be at a high level divided into two parts. One is something that the data area that is created as soon as the JVM starts, and it ends as soon as the JVM exits. And the other category would be something that runs per the thread. Okay, so the memory is occupied per thread, or the objects that are being initialized during the program run. So the runtime data areas are continuously being used during the program run. So as soon as the class is loaded into the subsystem, this section of loading, it actually captures all the metadata or the class level information, class level variables, and all those things, and it stores those data into the method area. Once the loading is performed, then comes linking. Linking itself then contains a three-step process of verifying, preparing, and resolving. So the verify is something that verifies the bytecode. It checks the bytecode for the things like if the class that is put as an input is correct or not, or whether it contains some malicious code or something like that. And if there is any error that is generated by the verifying process, it throws a verify error, java.lang.verify error at this step only. Once the verification is done, then it comes the preparing part. So every class level variable, let's say any static variable, all those variables are initialized and provided with the default value at this particular stage. And then comes the resolving. So all the semantic references are now replaced with the actual references from the method area. So this is the three-step process of linking the class file. Now then comes the initialization. The initialization phase actually is a phase which invokes the static blocks or such blocks in which the class level variables are being initialized with some value. So any if there is any static variable that has been provided some value at the class level, that will be initialized with that particular value in this initialization phase of class loader subsystem. Uh, Both class loader subsystem and execution engine interacts continuously with the runtime data areas in order to use the memories efficiently. Now let's talk about execution engine. So once the class is loaded properly, then comes the execution part where execution engine reads the instructions that are written in the bytecode. So reading the instruction or interpreting the instructions written in the bytecode is done by the interpreter of the execution engine. So every instruction is read one by one and is being executed into the operating system. Execution is engine is something that also handles the resource management. So let's say the program requires memory or some other resources. The execution engine is the one that is responsible for managing that part as well. So when we say memory management, then comes garbage collection into picture. So whenever, let's say, the objects are being initialized and we want to deallocate some space for the objects which are not being used anymore in the memory, then garbage collection runs a thread on the heap and it checks for the unreferenced objects and removes them from the heap memory so that JVM can have some free space to run the application. Uh, as we say that the interpreter is interpreting the bytecode and executing each and every instruction, there can be instances that the same set of bytecode are being read and executed again and again. So this can create a performance issue. So to overcome this limitation, execution has another subcomponent called JIT compiler. So what happens is the set of there is a threshold that is marked with a bytecode. So if there is a bytecode that is being executed again and again, so execution engine then converts that set of bytecode into the native code and stores that into a special cache. And this set of thing of converting the bytecode into the native code, so that whenever the next time this code is going to be executed, it does not needs to be reinterpreted. Instead, the JIT compiler provides the native code itself and it directly gets executed and it provides a better performance in terms of execution. So during the execution of the code, there can be some functionalities that are not coming from Java and they are coming from some native libraries like C or C++ that are actually being used to interact with the operating system. To have such option to work with the operating system, Java uses the JNI interface or Java native interface to interact with the native libraries that further interacts with the operating system and hardware in order to execute the program. Let's see the runtime data areas. Okay, as we discussed that the runtime data areas are something that can be segregated into two parts. One is something as soon as the JVM starts, that method or that the area of data is initiated, and when the JVM is destroyed, that particular area is destroyed. And there is another set of data area that is generated per thread. Okay, so let's discuss about all the data areas. So at a high level, these are the five data areas that comes under the runtime data areas of JVM. Let's start with PC registers. So the code that is being executed, so there are set of instructions that are being followed. So every thread run contains a set of instructions that needs to be executed, and that instruction is fed in PC register. So every thread has its own PC register, and it contains the instruction that needs to be executed. Then comes JVM stack. So every call or every thread in itself creates a stack or a method called stack, and that stack and storing the data, the local variable data, local variables, or the method data, or the references of the objects that are created in that particular method are stored into the JVM stack. Then comes heap. Heap contains the object initialized with any new keyword. So any object that is created inside heap. We already talked about method area. A method area that contains the class level information, or the information that you can relate it with the static variables. So all such information or the method level information are stored into the method area. So there are some constant pools that are also created as part of method area. So there are some string constant pools. We will discuss about all these areas in much more detail. So all these constant pools come as part of method area. There is another type of stack when we talk about calling native method. So any calling stack or calling method stack that is created by calling the method native method libraries is part of the native method stack. So overall, this is how JVM architecture looks like, and this is how the class is loaded, verified, and executed using the JVM architecture, and it also interacts with the native libraries to work with the operating system. We'll discuss about all these components in another videos, all these subcomponents in much more detail in the coming videos. So at a very high level, JVM runs a platform neutral bytecode and interprets it to run the platform specific machine code. This is the functionality of JVM. It is also responsible for calling the main method and running your program. So when we say we are writing a basic program in Java and writing a hello world program, and we need to write a main method, a static main method that is the initial point of our application. So that main method, calling of main method, is done by JVM. JVM can also compile interpreted code into the native code. We discussed about it that the execution engine contains a subcomponent called JIT compiler, which can actually interpret the bytecode and convert it into the native code for the codes that are being frequently called upon, so that it can improve the performance by not reinterpreting the same bytecode again and again. And JVM also contains garbage collection, which provides us with the functionality of automatic memory management. We discussed about it that it helps us to destroy and deallocate unreferenced objects from memory space, so that the program can get some extra space in order to function properly. Thank you for watching this video. This series of video also contains much more details about the architecture of JVM. So stay tuned.